Alright. You know when your ears pop and it feels like you're underwater? Hello! My name is Anthony Renteria. I think this is not... I need to like figure out some sort of... Because it's like bothering me because it's not... Like this is flat. And this is what's flat. I have a stuffy nose. I don't have COVID. I just have a cold. And I wore double mask in the theater. So no one judge me. You know, that this is the struggle. Alright? This is the struggle. I'm fully vaccinated, double masked. I sat at the very end of the theater. Anyways, so today is a special occasion. Today I watched The Eternals, directed by Chloe Zhao, written by a bunch of people. I just want to say, starting off, just starting off, I just want to say, get this out of the way. I am not the biggest fan of the MCU film series. And by that I mean, like, I'm not a super fan. I don't think I'm a super fan of many things. Well, I guess I am a super fan of a couple of things. Like, I am a fan, I guess, like, fanboy is what I'm trying to say. I am not the biggest MCU fan. I am not an MCU fanboy. So, if you consider yourself an MCU fanboy, please don't be offended. I'm watching this film through the lens of a film lover and a cinephile, and mostly a cinephile of what I would assume the MCU fanboys would call artsy fartsy. Primarily, yeah. So that's my bias here. Okay. I like art films. I like indie films. I like very specific kind of films. Now, I'm not saying I don't like all the MCU films. I love the majority of them. Like, I love popcorn flicks. I love action. I love cinematic blockbusters. I think that's always been a big part of my life. Growing up, when I was young, the big blockbuster films were the only ones I really saw at home. Because, you know, those are the films that my parents, my dad, would get, you know, on DVD or Blu-ray or VHS or what have you. Throughout my growing time, you know, those were the films that I consumed before I had a option of choosing what films to watch. You know, the modern blockbusters of whatever year that I was living through were the ones that I consumed. So I have a deep appreciation of them, but I also, you know, in my later years, I've grown a deep appreciation of like the emotional films, and I think. And maybe this is like an ignorant belief, but I think there's a beautiful middle ground between blockbuster and emotional indie film. And I think they can be synchronized into one thing, and that's my dream to one day become a filmmaker and do just that. Like that's my dream, okay? That's my one day in 10, 20, 30, or never. I mean, I don't know. It's looking like never, because I am a extreme pessimist, but that'd be my dream one day, is to have something that costs like $200 million, and it could be as impactful and emotional as a indie film that costed like $5 million. That's my dream. One day, if it ever happens, you can come back to this review and be like, dude, you did it. But anyways, I'm talking about the Eternals today. I'm already 5 minutes in. As you can tell, I'm kind of beating around the bush. I think I do this a lot when I don't really like a film. So I watched this film with my damn it. So it's just gonna be green on the top of my head. So I watched this film with my good buddy Jeffrey Carroll. He invited me out to watch this movie with him at our local theater. He's a great friend, a great collaborator, and great creator on his own right. So go check out his work on the Back Bedroom podcast. He's going to be doing an episode about this film, The Eternals, as soon as possible. I mean, it's probably already out. It's probably out before I put this out. So do yourself a favor. It's going to be in the link. There's going to be like a bio link that has like all the links. It's like a link within a link. You know, it's like some Inception link type stuff. So click on that. Go check him out, because he's going to have a review on The Eternals. And he's going to, if you're an MCU fan, if you're a comic fan, if you love what the MCU has been doing, you're going to want to hear his takes, because, one, I am not the biggest MCU fan. Like, I do love a lot of what they do. But, you know, like, I'm getting fatigued. And I'm getting, like, franchise fatigue. To a little bit. So I think that's what I'm experiencing. But if you're excited about the MCU and you want to be excited about that, go check him out. He's gonna have, you know, a full breakdown on this film, and he's gonna talk about it in a way that I think you'll appreciate. Because the second thing I want to say, besides the me experiencing slight fatigue, is that I don't really know a lot about the comic world. I don't know about what's gonna happen. I don't know. I don't know much about anything, of anything at all. Actually, I am a very dim person. I think. I don't know. But especially when it comes to the MCU stuff, I don't know much about like the characters. I don't know about the lore. I don't know about the backstory. I don't know about what could happen or should happen or will happen. And I think he is a great resource if you are interested in that. He can be your one-stop shop to all things MCU with his review of this. Because I think there's a lot here that builds upon something greater. And I think me being a dim, non-reader, non-knower, you know, I'm kind of limited in my experience of this. So all I have is the experience that I had in the theater. So go check out the Back Bedroom podcast. Links below. Let's officially start my review. Chloe Zhao. There's a bunch of actors and actresses that I'm just not going to mention right now because there's just so many. You know, it's like a cast of like 8 or 10 Eternals. And they all did a great job. The performances are all good. Like as they always are in MCU films, all the actors and actresses, they always just do a good job. So that is the same. And this is like a non-spoiler version, hot take of this film. Like I just got out of the theater. I'm in here. I'm talking about it. I'm very exhausted and tired. Drank a lot of cough medicine. So, you know, take that into account of my discussion here. All the performances were good. I guess I'll mention the standouts for me. I loved Kumail Nanjiani. I'm gonna fuck up all the names. I don't even have the names pulled up in front of me. But Kumail, he's awesome. I loved his like comedic spirit in the film. I think he did great. Him and his sidekick. I'll just say that he has a sidekick. And that sidekick brought a lot of levity and humor to the film, and I love that. As like all MCU films, they always have, you know, that tinge of humor. So if you're a fan of that, this film continues that legacy forward. And I guess the rest of the performers, I think they did well. But this film suffers from one issue. I think it just suffers from the typical issue of when you have an ensemble cast. Like, look, I write a lot of things, and I purposely am obsessed with the idea of writing about one character, like a singular character, and getting to know them intensely. Like, my last review was about Spencer, Kristen Stewart playing Princess Diana, and that film was so focused on her perspective that now, upon reflection, I'm like, you know what? I didn't learn anything about the royal family because the only thing I experienced was her experience, and I find that beautiful. That's my bias in film and filmmaking and storytelling, is a singular perspective. And I think with the Marvel films, but specifically with the Eternals film, this film specifically, you know, it's like the Guardians of the Galaxy and it's like the Avengers, but it's way more characters. You know, it's like 8 to 10 characters. I can't remember the exact number. I can't do math, so apologies. You know, like half a dozen characters or more that this film is dealing with, and I think it's. I mean, I could not ever write a story introducing a dozen or more characters and then having them all have meaning or texture or motives, you know. And I think what Chloe Zhao does here, directing, and then the many writers, I think there was like, I don't know how many writers are in this film. Let's say more than 3. I think it was more than 3. The writers of the film, you know, they had a insurmountable challenge doing this. You know, I think James Gunn, with his film, The Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, establishing 4 main characters in one film, you know, that's quite a challenge. And I think James Gunn did a great job. He did it again with the Suicide Squad. It's very fun. It's very exciting. And I thought that was a good film. But here, I feel like the film is biting too much. It's biting too much than it can chew. I don't know if that's a phrase. You took a bite of something that's too large. I don't know. I feel like this film is maybe tackling too much than it can handle. You know, this film kind of dragged for me, just my my experience watching it, it kind of dragged. It's not that I didn't care about the characters, because I did grow to enjoy a few select of them, but it just felt like a bunch of people doing stuff. And I wish I had a Cineverm episode dedicated to this, because I think my thoughts of this film require like an hour, 2 hour of explanation. Because like I feel like if I just say something rapidly off the top of my mind, it's just going to come off as extremely negative and just like, oh, this movie's trash. I don't think it's trash. I think it was a good time. It was a fun time. It is exactly what the MCU films have done. And I think that is like the central disappointment and enjoyment of this series, is that they're so consistent. They're so like, it's like a flat line, and then you get the bumps upward. The consistency of their quality is amazing. But at the same time, as a film lover, as someone who loves very introspective stories, I think I feel the fatigue. I'm getting fatigued of the same thing. So one of the problems, I think, is just too many characters. I wish I could spend more time with each individual character. I feel like the film does set up enough to where I'm interested. Like, I'm never like, I don't care about Icarus. I don't care about, Ajax. I don't care about, I'm forgetting names. There's a lot of names. Look, and that's just me not remembering names. It has nothing to do with the quality of the film. There's so many characters, but it does do a good enough job to where I'm interested. Like I'm very interested in all the characters. I'm interested in their motives, and I'm interested in their emotional defects and affects of other characters. I don't know if that makes sense. But there's a lot of motives, and I think the film actually does a good job of like establishing all those motives, and I feel intrigued in all of them. And it's just weird, because I'm like, wait, are we gonna get another film of the Eternals? I don't know. I think I would have cut like maybe 2 or 3 of them out, and then just focus more on a select few. But there are a few characters that I really loved and I really enjoyed seeing on screen. The biggest problem I have with this film, and I feel like I have this for a lot of Marvel films, and I have this for a lot of the typical blockbuster films, I'm not interested in the villains. Like, I just don't, I think it's like, I mean, it should be common sense by now that the villain is, like, when you're dealing with superhero lore, when you're dealing with the comic side of films, I mean, I feel like the villain should be of greatest importance. The villain is the refracted definition of your hero, right? Like, the antagonist is the mirror evil reflection of the protagonist. And I think this film has that fatal flaw that most films in this genre suffer. And I don't understand why it's always film that like suffers it. Like, just from the few comics that I've read, I mean, they've all been very interesting and fascinating to me, because they feel way more personal. And I feel like in films, it's like they just forget. Maybe it's just the people who make the films don't think of the comics or something. I think there's definitely like a lack of interest in the villain side. I mean, there's a moment in the film. Again, no spoilers, but there is a moment in the film where the villains, it gets interesting for a moment, but then that is kind of simmered off in a way that I didn't really enjoy. The main like CGI villain of this film, I just didn't enjoy. Like, I didn't like the creature design of this, like the evil monsters in this film. I don't know. I'm just getting wary of, like, it just feels like a monster from another film. Like, it honestly feels kind of like the monsters from like all the other MCU films, when there's like monsters attacking people, and then it's like an army of monsters, and then an army of people attacking the army of monsters. And I don't know, they just all look like hairless, lions with big chomping teeth and tentacles and claws, and they have, huge fangs, and I don't know, it just feels very typical. And I didn't like that, and it just sucked that the majority of this film deals with those types of monsters, and I didn't like it. I just didn't like that aspect, and it just really drained on me, and it really made me feel fatigued watching the movie and all these monsters that I just didn't care about. And I guess they're called like variants or something. So I guess those are my two big complaints. I just think it's too many characters. The monsters are boring and bland. I mean, I guess it really does move the MCU forward in a way. I just don't know in which way. Like, me not knowing anything about comics yet. That deals specifically with the MCU type of timeline and what they could be doing. I'm not sure. Just like you and all of y'all should be going to the back bedroom after this, I will also be going to the back bedroom to learn more. Because I am like, I'm in a vacuum right now. I don't know anything. I haven't looked it up, like normal people. You get out of an MCU movie, you see the two end tags, and you're like, all right, who is that guy that showed up in the thingy? Like that's what the majority of us do. I haven't done that, so I don't know. I don't know anything. I just know I saw two tags, and I'm not going to spoil them, but I'm confused. So let's all go to the back bedroom. Let's learn from our great knower, and then we can be excited together. But I mean, I say all this, and I still don't think it's a bad movie. I think it was a good time. I enjoyed a lot of elements. There was a lot of themes. Let me talk about the theme of this film, because I think it's not just that it's too many characters and it has the villains are boring, but it's also tackling an insurmountable amount of time. I think that's a great risk, and it's a great challenge that Chloe embarked on. Like, I don't think she's a bad filmmaker, or anyone involved is bad at their craft. I just think it's just a logistical issue of too many things. I think there is a limit. I found my limit, and it's apparently one YouTube channel and two podcasts. And I think every creator and every artistic vision has a limit, and I think this film reached this limit and then broke it, and then it kind of fell apart. So it tackles just like an insurmountable amount of time. It's from the beginning of humanity to current time. You're talking about thousands and thousands of years of humanity in this film. Kind of hits it in like little bullet points. We see certain time periods of humanity with these characters. And I think they did a good job, like, establishing what these characters think and thoughts, and then the theme and the idea of, like, is humanity worth saving? And I think the film is interesting in that concept. And I think that's what I'm interested in as a writer and also as a viewer. It's like, ooh, how are they going to tackle that? How are they going to, like, dig into humanity and the purpose of humanity, and, like, is it worth saving? These eternal beings, what are they doing, and why are they doing it? Now, obviously, I can't dig any deeper because of spoiler reasons, because there is a lot revealed about these eternal beings and the place they fit in humanity's future and their goals and ambitions. But I don't know. I think it could have dug way deeper. Like, I think it did everything. It did, like, the minimal things that it should have done. It talked about each of the points. Every character kind of highlighted, like, why they believe humanity needs to exist. So I think it did it well, but it didn't make me think about humanity internally. Like, I feel like I've had these thoughts that the characters share, but it didn't make me investigate anything inside of myself or outside of myself. And I think that's kind of a flaw, because I think it's such a big topic, such a big theme. I feel like you had the possibility of really digging in to that idea and really getting your hands dirty, and and it's a big MCU film. Like, I don't really expect it to do that. That's just my internal artsy, capital C cinema fanboy coming out. Like, man, I just wish it could be deeper. I wish it could show more. I wish it could have more. So that's the other complaint. The other complaint that I have is, I don't know if maybe it's just because of the monsters, but the CGI, I mean, it's a CGI fest. I mean, I don't think that's really a negative, because almost everything is a CGI fest. But for some reason, I don't know. Maybe it's the Dune film that's kind of like tinted my view of cinema for the next couple weeks or months. But I don't know. All the action scenes, though, I liked how they were choreographed. It felt way more handheld than a lot of the other MCU films that I can remember. But I still didn't feel really involved or excited about it. So yeah, that's my just immediate reactions and review of the Eternals. It's kind of a sour take. I wouldn't say I'm, like, let down, because I honestly had no expectations for this film. I heard a lot of the reactions were negative, so I was expecting something negative, but I understood that a lot of the audience loved it. So I think it's just if you're a fan of, if you're a film buff, if you're part of that group, where you really like cinema, and you really are into the the nitty gritty of the film world. You know who Chloe Zhao is. Like, if you don't know who Chloe Zhao is, then you just don't know. But if you know who she is, then you know, like, she just won an Oscar for Best Picture and Best Director for Nomadland. I didn't really like that film. But, you might know of her previous work from, like, The Writer. That film I really loved. I think that was a fantastic film. So, if you're coming from that lens, I don't think there's much here for you, unless you're a fan of the MCU, because it doesn't really feel like a Chloe Zhao movie. Like I feel like I understand her aesthetic from her two previous films. It is very nature-esque. I think there's like the locations in this film are beautiful. Like, she obviously translated that into this film with her location scouting and the settings and the sets. But I don't think her, like, cinematic voice is present at all. Like, it feels like another MCU film. And I guess I kind of say that as a negative. That's probably the thing I dislike the most about the MCU, is that I don't understand why they can't just have individual aesthetics and individual visuals and a palette of their own. Like, I think you could just have distinct voices doing distinct things and then mesh them together when you have a big event. That's just what I think, and that's just what I want. I think the beauty in comics, and this is why it's, like, confusing to me why the MCU feels so samey, is that the beauty of comics is that it's always a different artist, it's always a different writer, it's always a reinvention, it's always a recalibration, it's always a retelling, it's always a new voice, an old voice, a different voice, it's always changing. It's like an evolving enigma. It's like a growing idea of what a character is. And I think maybe this is just all Kevin Feige's idea, and, like, we haven't experienced the next version of that, and, like, maybe that's what I want is alright, I love all this is all fun and cool, but what's the next idea, And I think maybe that's the flaw, that's the fatal flaw in the MCU right now. I don't know, but there are rare occasions. Like, I think James Gunn does a good job. He has a visual stamp that I think he stamps on his films. Taika Waititi does the same. And the Russos, I think the Russos are probably, like, bar none, the best filmmakers who have tackled the MCU. I think they have a great deal of identity when it comes to framing and setting a scene, and also capturing emotion and scale. Like Avengers Endgame and Infinity War are two of my favorites. And I think they just have a good hand at that. I didn't really enjoy my experience that much with the Eternals, not knowing much, not knowing anything about the Eternals. So that's my immediate reaction and review. I'm sorry if anyone's disappointed. I'm still excited for Spider-Man, though. I'm very excited for Spider-Man. I liked the last two Spider-Man films, and they had an interesting visual aesthetic, and I'm excited to see those. But yeah, so don't forget to check out The Back Bedroom. Like I mentioned many times, he's going to have a more in-depth view and a more knowledgeable take on this film. Check out Cineverm, a film podcast where I review films that are more rare and interesting, like capital C cinema. That's what we focus on. And then check out Comic Verm, where I'm just now beginning my journey on reading comics for the first time. And all those links will be below. And thank you so much for watching this. I should have a written review. And I guess my final rating for this film, I guess there's two things. Like, I was trying to have a format, and I'm kind of like, I'm out of order. I'm out of order here. Would I recommend this film? I think if you are a fan of the MCU, you'll like this film. It captures the same energy and the same tone of most MCU films. I don't think it's like, if you were to have your ABC list of MCU films, I think this would be in the B-, maybe C+, C+. I don't know what range I'm working in, but let's just say C+ of MCU films. Like, it's there with the Ant-Mans and stuff. But yeah, I think this is C+ MCU film. So yeah, it's probably like, you'll watch it. If you were just an average moviegoer and you don't care anything about the MCU, I mean, I don't know. I don't think you would get much out of it. Like, I feel like a lot of the interest would be if you're interested in the MCU and what's going on and what's going to happen in the future. And I don't know how much of this is going to affect the future or how much of it has affected the future. I don't know anything. Again, watch the Back Bedroom podcast. Listen to the Back Bedroom podcast. for more details. But so yeah, that's I guess my recommendations. If you're a fan of the MCU, go ahead and watch it. If you're not a fan of the MCU, I think it's your just normal blockbuster-esque film, chill type beat kind of film. You just watch it and it's a good time. It's not offensively bad. None of the film is bad. Nothing's bad. It's just a typical superhero fun time. And I think that's fine. If you're into that, then you'll have a great time. So what is my rating? So I guess the final thing I'll say is, what is my rating of The Eternals? Right now, coming out of the theater, just having experienced the film. Oh man, this is challenging. So I think I'd give this film, those are my recommendations. I think I would give this film, I think I would give it a 5 out of 10. So it's just mediocre. It's average. It's the middle of the line. I don't mean that offensively. I mean, that's just what it is. That's what it kind of felt like. I liked a lot of elements, but I never felt emotionally attached to any specific character. I think there was a bunch of characters that I think I could have felt attached to. I didn't like the monster designs. I didn't like the overwhelming amount of time that it covered. I think it could have spent more time with each character or time period. I think the plot, I mean, it all made sense. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with the film. It's just nothing really captivated me or moved me or emotionally touched me in any sort of way. So I think it's just, the kind of thing you watch and then you forget about it. I mean, that's honestly kind of what it feels like, and I think I will forget about it until another MCU film comes along and then reminds me, like, that's the Eternal people. That's kind of my general takes. That's my review. A 5 out of 10. It's mediocre. And that's it. I mean, that's my takes on this film. Thank you for watching my Eternals immediate reactions and review. Thank you for listening. I think I already did all my plugs. So, yeah, I'll see you next week. Hopefully, I don't even know what movie's coming out next week. But I'll see you next week. Oh, did I say that I'm lonely because I'm a critic? Or I'm a critic because I'm lonely? I can't remember. See ya!